All right, hey there, welcome to the first intro video of our next unit, Unit 12, where we're going to be focusing on how to represent and then analyze data. Now, the types of data that we're going to start out with are a type of data called bivariate data. And the word bivariate generally just means that there's two variables. You can kind of see that in the word. Much like a bicycle has two wheels, two cycles, if you will. So we're going to be focusing on bivariate data in this unit. And the first type of graph that we're going to be exploring is something called a scatterplot, which I think a lot of you have seen before, and they're very intuitive, pretty easy to read. It's a type of chart where we just observe and visually display the relationship between the two variables. So again, you can kind of see bivariate, the word variable is up there in that word, and scatterplots again have a lot to do with the relationships between variables. Throughout the unit or in other places, you might see a scatter plot referred to as a scattergram, a scatter graph, or a scatter chart. If you hear any of those words, we mean the same thing. All right, now for our uses of the scatter plot, again, as I've kind of been mentioning, it allows us to, it just demonstrates and allows us to see the relationship between our two variables. And depending on what we see when we look at that, we might actually be able to define it as a certain type of correlation. And then beyond that, we might be able to use the scatter plot to look at different trends or patterns in the data and eventually make predictions. All right, now what we're going to do here is we're just actually going to review briefly. This is going to not take us long at all, just how to make a scatter plot. And after we make the scatter plot here on paper, I'm actually going to switch over to Google Sheets and show you guys how to make a scatter plot using Google Sheets. So we're going to do both today on paper and electronically through Google Sheets. Now for this example that we have here on page 1, we just have that Lauren recorded the number of homework assignments she completed for each unit of math this year. So like in the first unit, for example, in that unit, she completed 5 of her homework assignments and then went on to get an 80 on that unit test. For another unit, she did 6 homework assignments and got a 90 and so on. You can see here on the unit when she didn't do any of her homework, she failed that test. She got a 40. So let's just go ahead and plot these points and we can kind of see what kind of a relationship or trend exists here between these two factors. So we're just going to plot real quick over 5 up 80. Go ahead and join me in your packet plotting these points. When she completed 6 assignments, we said she got a 90. When she completed only 3 assignments, she got a 65, and that's okay to kind of estimate it halfway between the 60 and the 70. Part of what we do this year in 7th grade is to kind of kick this up a notch in difficulty, is we just start to change the scale here. So this one's pretty basic. It's just by 1s here and then by 10s here. The next point was a 0, 0, 40, so right here. We have 2 assignments, was a 65 again. 6 assignments, got a 95 that time. All right, 4, 80, so 4 assignments, 80. 7 assignments, a 99, so that's almost at the 100. And then 3 assignments, she ended up passing that one with a 72. All right, so you can see here we have a scatter plot. Where we're going with this eventually is we're going to kind of be talking about how there's a line of best fit, and this line obviously has a positive slope, so this thing has a positive trend. That's where we're going with this eventually. But for the purpose of today's video, I just wanted to review that we're just trying to plot points. This is bivariate data. Again, our 2 variables here are the amount of homework that she's completing, and the other variable here is the unit test score. And now what I'm going to do is just switch over to Google Sheets. I really want you guys to pay attention to this part because you're going to have to be making 2 scatter plots later today on Google Sheets. So let me just switch over. It's going to be the same data set for Lauren's test. You can see there's my Google image for the bicycles that I just put in there. All right, here we go. So using the data below, we're just going to make a scatter plot. This is the exact same data set we just had in our notes. If you don't believe me, you can just look at the table of values. Now, first thing I want to point out is how simple it's going to be. Okay, if I just select the data involved, I have all of the number of homework assignments she completed right here, and then I have what she got on the unit test here. If we click Insert and then just go to Chart, it's going to default here to like a bar graph. All we need to do over here is go to Chart Type, and when you scroll down, if you keep scrolling, see how Scatter is one of the options here? So I'm just going to tell it to make it a scatter plot instead. And if you look at your notes, you'll see that this is the exact same scatter plot. It just looks a little different because see how the scale is different? We used a scale of ones down here, and we have more room off to the side of the graph that we ended up not using. So what you can do is you can take the graph and you can kind of shrink it a little bit. And we're not changing the scale here. Nothing's changing. They're still going by twos. But you can see if I shrink it a little bit, now that really looks like what we have in our notes packet. If you just want to look down in your notes packet and kind of compare it. Now there's a couple of issues here that we have with this graph. This one's not going to be satisfactory for me, mainly because we haven't even labeled the two axes. I have no idea what's going on down here or up here. So I'm just going to delete that and come over here and say, well, what this column was the number of homework assignments completed. And then I can tell it to wrap that text so it won't spill over into the next one. All right, cool. And then this was the unit test score. If you care, you can, make it look like a table. See how I did that? And if you're really getting fancy, you could put that in and kind of make it look like a table of values. For me personally, it would kind of annoy me that those aren't centered. I prefer bold. So now this is a little bit more like a professional looking kind of table of values. But what that allows us to do is to say, okay, now when I select the data, what I can do is now insert a chart. And see how the scatter plot here, see how it now has the number of homework assignments completed down here. See how it uses the unit test scores right here. And see how what it does, it gives us a title. Now you can leave that title there, or you can double click into it and edit it. And so you could say Lauren's performance in whatever class it was. It said it was a math unit, so in math class. So you could even change it and kind of generalize it like that if you wanted to. And so then when you just exit out here, now you've got this table. I'm going to kind of shrink it so it looks a little bit more like it is in our notes. And see how I just moved it over where it says insert here? I just moved it over right there. So that's what you guys are going to be doing today. I'm going to have some data sets right here. See, I've got data set 1 and data set 2. And I want you guys to just practice using the data from each data set. And I want you to just make 2 scatter plots. And you're going to do that in a little bit. Okay. It's pretty simple. Like I said, in case you need to see it one more time, you just drag your data, you hit insert. And when you go to chart, you can select which one. This one was already a scatter plot because I had already done it. But you can just select scatter. And I'm going to delete that because we don't need 2 of them. All right. So that concludes this video for how to represent data in a scatter plot. Very short and sweet and to the point. What you guys are going to do now is you're going to be in your packet and you're just going to practice making a couple of scatter plots on pages 2 and 3. And then you're going to take notes over here on page 4. Okay? Thank you for watching.